The world is not standing on the edge of a cliff. The world jumped off long ago. It's just that no one dares to look down. With over $315 trillion in global debt, a financial system addicted to monetary injections, and policies designed like tranquilizers for markets, the modern economy is heading straight into a great recession without needing any warning. But the real danger does not lie in the numbers. It lies in how we interpret them, deny them, and justify every mistake with flowery terminology. This is not a crisis. This is collective suicide disguised as economic stability. Let's strip away that disguise, starting with the massive debt silently devouring the world. Global debt, a 30-year intoxication. The global financial system is drifting in a sea of debt that has never been this deep in history. The figure of $315 trillion, equivalent to 300% of global GDP, is no longer a warning, it's a blaring alarm. Today, 10% of the entire planet's productive capacity is spent just on interest payments. This is not growth, it is a machine that consumes itself in order to continue existing. A system that burns productivity to feed the illusion of progress. A machine that continues to run, not because it's healthy, but because no one dares to shut it down. Instead of admitting the weakening, nations, corporations, and individuals all keep borrowing to maintain the image of wealth. The truth is, this money doesn't create new value, it only redistributes risks from one person to another. Debt doesn't vanish, it only changes hands. And in a world where everyone owes everyone else, who will be the first to fall in the domino chain? That's the real financial game now, the most dangerous ever invented, and it's heading into the end game. If one person uses 10% of their income to pay interest, they are living in instability. If the entire human race does that, we're heading for disaster. Debt accumulation is no longer a financial strategy, it's a belief system, a blind faith that borrowing is the solution to everything. But that belief is beginning to collapse, and the world is now seeing the consequences. No more fiscal room, no more effective tools, only an overinflated balloon waiting to explode. Stimulus policies, from remedy to addiction. For many decades, developed economies have refined a temporary weapon, pumping money into the system whenever a crisis hits. Lower interest rates, increased stimulus, rescue the market from downturns. But what was once a temporary fix has now become an addiction. Even when there's no crisis, they still refuse to slow down. Even without recessions, they keep pushing cash into the system. This machine now only has an accelerator, no brakes, and in the end, any machine without brakes will go off a cliff. The painful truth is, we have never learned how to step off the gas when things are going well. Policymakers fear market reactions more than they care about long-term sustainability. They continue to inject money, continue to provide support, continue to build bubbles. We are living in an economy addicted to financial stimulants, and no one wants to stop because the addiction has gone too deep. The question is no longer, are we addicted, but when will we suffer the withdrawal shock? Not withdrawing stimulus during good times means there are no tools left when real crises come. Ironically, this so-called flexible system is tying its own hands. When every policy tool has already been used up during peacetime, nothing is left when the real war begins. We've taken all the medicine before we got sick. Now the illness has arrived, and the pharmacy is empty. This is the devastating price of political weakness and addiction to short-term growth. The refusal of pain is killing the economy. In the past, recessions were not just tragedies. They were natural mechanisms to cleanse the economy. They eliminated unproductive businesses and allowed resources to be reallocated to more promising sectors. That pain gave birth to renewal. But today, in the face of every downturn, we block the fall. We inject cash, we cover the wound. And in doing so, we are letting the system rot from the inside. Silently, slowly, but surely. We no longer dare to let weak businesses die. We no longer allow failure to pay its price. As a result, countless zombie companies continue to exist, creating no real value, surviving only on borrowed capital and blind optimism. Business models that are inefficient, unprofitable, or outright meaningless still get funded, still go public, still persist, simply because no one dares to unplug the machine. And every time we postpone a necessary collapse, we trade away long-term vitality for short-term illusion. Preventing the economy from experiencing pain is not compassion, it's a crime. When the market is not allowed to reshape itself around real performance, the entire system is pulled downward. Strong businesses get trapped in weak supply chains. Real investors are drowned in speculative noise. Genuine opportunities are buried beneath bubble hype. Postponing necessary pain is the surest path to total paralysis. And once paralysis sets in, even the healthy parts begin to die. Trade wars, a calculated shock. Tariffs were once seen as mere tools of trade protection. But today, they have become strategic weapons used to shake the foundations of production systems and global supply chains. When one major country imposes punitive tariffs on another, it's no longer about trade, it's an act of disruption. The damage goes beyond goods. Trust, investment, and the very order of the market are all pulled into a spiral of instability. This is not an economic dialogue. It's a deliberate detonation. The impact of tariffs doesn't lie in the percentage placed on products. The real impact is the fear injected into businesses and investors. When no one knows what policies will come tomorrow, no one dares to make long-term investments. Capital stalls, supply chains freeze, employment halts. This is not a market falling naturally. This is a contraction created by policy. It is not a recession caused by weakness. It is a disruption designed behind closed doors with full intent. Trade wars are called rebalancing globalization, but in truth, they are calculated political gambles. If lucky, they redirect investment flows. If not, they destroy global confidence, an invisible yet priceless asset. Businesses won't commit when they don't know what the world will look like in 6 months. And when investment stops, everything else stops too. This is no accident. This is a planned shakeup, engineered inside policy war rooms, and the whole world is being forced to absorb its consequences. Recession, a manipulated definition. What is a recession? 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth? A spike in unemployment? These are just vague outlines, not clear boundaries, and that vagueness is intentional. The term recession sounds like an economic fact, but in reality, it's a tool of narrative control. Define it too early and markets react. Delay it long enough and political damage is postponed. The uncertainty is not from lack of knowledge. It's a strategic choice to manage perception rather than reveal truth. Unlike bankruptcy, which has clear legal criteria, the term recession floats in ambiguity. Some governments will stare at falling production, collapsing consumption, and rising layoffs, yet still declare, "We're not in a recession." Not because the data says otherwise, but because admitting it would trigger consequences. The meaning of recession is no longer a matter of economics, it's a performance. As long as the word isn't spoken, officials hope reality can be postponed. But this denial is dangerous. When definitions are blurred, people lose their bearings. Consumers don't know whether to save or spend. Investors become paralyzed. Business owners hold back. In a system built on confidence, confusing the truth is like breaking the compass in a storm. The economy doesn't collapse when numbers fall. It collapses when trust disappears. And that disappearance often begins with a lie dressed up as definition. Lower growth doesn't mean losing wealth. GDP is flow, not stock. It measures the pace of production, not the amount of accumulated wealth. If an economy produces 10 million units of goods in the previous quarter and only 9 million this quarter, GDP says, you've shrunk. But if those 9 million products still exist and continue creating value, what exactly has been lost? Nothing. We've simply produced less, not become poorer. Confusing output reduction with actual loss is a dangerous illusion. And yet, this illusion dominates how we measure progress. Wealth lies in what is built and still exists, not in the rate at which new things are made. A house adds to GDP when it's built, not after. But the family living inside still benefits from it. Even if it's not counted again, it hasn't disappeared. Our economic system panics when the flow slows, even though the stock remains. This is the madness of modern thinking. We measure motion, not substance, and treat any slowdown like a catastrophe. The real problem isn't slower production. The problem is how we interpret it. Politicians panic. Media dramatizes, markets spiral, all over a single dip in a graph that doesn't reflect total value. GDP was never meant to tell the full story, but we've turned it into gospel. And now, when the number stumbles, the system panics. We are destroying trust, not because wealth is gone, but because we've forgotten how to measure it properly. Crisis lessons from history's collapse. When the dot-com bubble burst in the early 2000s, it wasn't just the fall of a sector. It was a direct hit to the belief in easy money. Countless businesses had no profits, no clear models, yet still raised billions just because investors were obsessed with imagined futures. The correction came when reality demanded real value, and during that process, a wave of worthless companies was wiped out. Painful, yes, but necessary. And from that vacuum, a stronger, more sustainable tech ecosystem was born. A few years later, the real estate market did the same thing. It exploded. But this time, not because of technology, but because housing had been turned into a hyper-financialized asset. Subprime loans were packed into securities and sold like candy. When reality struck, the entire system collapsed. Yet again, capital was redirected, not into flipping property, but into industries that created tangible products. The recession was brutal, but it realigned the investment landscape. It killed illusions and forced capital back to production. However, not every country went through that collapse. Some, like Canada and Australia, avoided the worst impacts thanks to stricter banking systems. But because they didn't get the necessary reset, they never cleansed their markets. Their real estate bubbles kept inflating, unchecked. And today, those very markets are among the most distorted on Earth. Avoiding crisis might feel like victory, but when it only delays the reckoning, the next collapse becomes far worse. Sometimes, not burning the forest allows rot to spread. Recession doesn't spare the strong. Classical theory sees recession as a natural predator, one that eliminates weak, inefficient businesses so that stronger ones can survive and thrive. But in reality, modern recessions do not distinguish between weak and strong. Many promising companies, still in their early stages, die simply because the capital dries up. They don't fail due to bad strategy. They collapse because the system suddenly cuts off their oxygen. Recession today is like wildfire. It burns everything in its path, including healthy trees that stood in the wrong place at the wrong time. Startups with real potential, innovative ideas, and capable teams still get wiped out if funding disappears. Investors become cautious, banks stop lending, consumers freeze spending. Every link in the chain breaks, not because it's flawed, but because the entire market is poisoned with fear. And in that climate, entrepreneurship disappears. Ambition vanishes, courage goes silent. Even when the ideas are solid, even when the people are capable, the moment capital pulls back, the fire consumes everything. Just like in nature, a strong, healthy animal can still be killed if it happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Recession works the same way. It doesn't reward the deserving, it punishes indiscriminately. Unless supported by smart policy, the damage spreads to everyone. That's why letting the market adjust on its own sounds like logic, but it's often cowardice disguised as strategy. And in this game, survival doesn't depend on merit. It depends on who gets hit first. Services, the hidden weakness in modern recessions. Modern economies no longer revolve around manufacturing. They survive on services. And services cannot be stored. A car can last for years, but an accounting hour, a class, or a repair job disappears the moment it happens. If service production stops for even a short time, its value drops to zero. There is no inventory, no stockpile, no buffer. That's why, when services slow down, the economic hit is immediate, faster, deeper, and harder than in any other sector. Worse, service workers lose income instantly. A technician losing contracts can't sell from inventory to survive. Teachers, consultants, and maintenance workers all lose income the moment clients disappear. And once they stop earning, they also stop spending on others' services. The collapse spreads like wildfire. It's not due to product failure. It's due to frozen demand. And in an economy that relies mostly on services, that kind of freeze quickly brings the entire machine to a halt. Even more dangerous, most of the added value in advanced economies now comes from services. That means even a small disruption leads to a direct shock in quality of life. Education disappears, healthcare pauses, infrastructure is left unrepaired. These things don't show up in warehouses, but they are the true foundations of modern living. When services stop, life stops. In a modern recession, the first thing lost is not goods. It's standard of living. And the market has no way to measure that in real time. Global trade-offs. Is this recession worth the sacrifice? Some argue that to fix the distorted system we're living in, we must accept a purposeful recession. But that is an extremely dangerous idea. When global debt is already sky high, even a small shock could be enough to push the entire system over the edge. Many loans only make sense if GDP keeps rising. If growth stalls, a chain of defaults begins. And this doesn't just hurt businesses, it shakes the financial core itself. The system isn't prepared for even a mild contraction. Even worse, if the real reason behind triggering a recession is to lower interest rates in time to refinance massive debts, then this is a gamble taken at the worst possible moment. Causing panic just to lower borrowing costs only terrifies lenders. When trust fades, capital becomes more expensive, not cheaper. So instead of helping the debt situation, we end up making it worse. Higher interest, greater risk, faster erosion. It's a miscalculation disguised as strategy. The economy is not a laboratory. No one has the right to trigger a test recession just to see how much damage the system can endure. Bad policies cause real consequences. People lose jobs, families lose homes, and generations lose trust. In today's fragile world, reform requires precision, not destruction. Calling recession a necessary remedy is like inducing a coma to treat a headache. Reckless, misguided, and likely to leave scars that last decades. We've armed the bomb, but we've removed the fuse. We are not facing a recession. We are being punished for avoiding it for too long. Global debt piled up, policies went astray, services became fragile, markets turned delusional, all stitched together into a glittering but hollow fortress. Recession is not the enemy. Denial is. If this crash comes, it will not be a rebalancing. It will be a financial purge where those who don't understand the rules get wiped out entirely. The true danger doesn't lie in timing. It lies in our refusal to see what's collapsing right in front of us. The question is no longer, will it happen? The only question left is, will we be conscious enough to survive it?